I'm Lisa and 31, and the night my husband texted, "Don't freak out, I'm alone in Vegas," I almost believed him. I told myself he deserved my trust until an hour later, my best friend sent me a photo that burned through everything I thought I knew. My husband, standing at an altar, sliding a ring onto my sister's hand. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just planned. Weeks later, at the family reunion, while everyone smiled and pretended we were still whole, I connected my phone to the big screen and pressed play. That was the night silence became my revenge and truth became the weapon that ended them both. What happened after changed my family forever. The text came at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday, a time when nothing extraordinary ever happens, except the kind of nothing that suddenly splits into something unforgettable. I was sitting at our kitchen island, half listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tapping of rain against the window. My phone lit up beside my coffee mug. "Don't freak out, I'm alone in Vegas." The words looked almost lazy, like he'd typed them with a smirk. No emojis. No punctuation beyond the period that felt too confident, too casual. "Don't freak out." He might as well have written you well. I stared at the message for a full minute. Daniel had told me he was going to a conference. Something about software systems, the kind of jargon that blurred together whenever he talked about work. I never really listened, not because I didn't care, but because he made it sound like a secret language designed to keep me outside. Still Vegas? That wasn't part of the plan. A thin unease curled in my chest, the kind that whispers before it screams. I texted back, "Why would I freak out?" Then, almost instantly, deleted it before hitting send. I decided not to give him the satisfaction of thinking I was paranoid. Instead, I placed my phone face down, took a slow breath, and reminded myself of the mantra I'd repeated too many times. Trust is not optional in marriage. But it wasn't trust one felt, it was a dull ache that had been growing for months. The late nights, the half-answered calls, the smell of perfume that wasn't mine. My sister, Claire, used to tease me that I was too forgiving, too patient for my own good. "You think silence makes you strong," she'd said once, "but it just makes it easier for people to lie to you." It's strange how her words came back that night, almost like a warning echoing from somewhere I hadn't looked yet. At 8:15, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Daniel. It was my best friend, Mia. "Are you sitting down?" I frowned. I typed back, "What's going on?" and waited. No answer for 30 seconds, then a photo came through. The image loaded slowly, line by line, as if the universe wanted to give me time to prepare. When it finally appeared, I almost didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a wedding chapel, one of those neon-lit Vegas places that reek of desperation and glitter. In the center stood a man in a black tuxedo, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. His hand was wrapped around a woman's fingers, sliding a ring onto her hand. And that woman, her hair, her dress, the curve of her jaw, was unmistakable. My sister, Claire. For a second, I felt the air leave the room, like someone had punched a hole through the world. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the photo, my reflection faintly visible in the dark screen. My hands trembled, not from shock, but from the sudden, raw clarity that replaced it. My husband was in Vegas. He wasn't alone. And my sister was wearing a white dress. I set my phone down carefully, as if handling something fragile that could explode. The refrigerator hummed louder. The rain outside had stopped. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to break. But I didn't. Instead, I cleaned the counter, wiped away invisible crumbs, folded a dish towel. Then, as if on autopilot, I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and began to plan. Not a confrontation, not yet. That would be too easy for them. What I wanted wasn't chaos. It was precision. The next few days were a blur of silence. Daniel returned home on Sunday evening, the picture of exhaustion. His voice had that too casual warmth people use when they're guilty. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his bag near the door. "You wouldn't believe how boring Vegas can be when you're working the whole time." I smiled. "I can imagine." He kissed my cheek, his lips brushing against skin that suddenly felt foreign to him. I watched him walk up the stairs, humming something off-key. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Mia again. You okay? I typed, perfectly fine. And I was. Or at least, I was something close to fine, something colder, steadier. There's a strange peace that comes after betrayal, like the quiet after a bomb goes off. You stop hoping. You start calculating. For weeks, I said nothing. I played the part of the loyal wife. Dinner on the table. Polite laughter. Subtle nods. Even Claire called me a few times, her voice bright and chirpy, pretending everything was normal. I listened to her talk about her new project, about how she'd been traveling more lately. I didn't interrupt. Every lie she told became another thread in the trap I was weaving. Then came the invitation, the annual family reunion. A sprawling weekend at my parents' lake house, where secrets never stayed hidden for long. Everyone would be there, my parents, our cousins, the whole polished facade of our perfect family. It was the perfect stage. The morning of the reunion, Daniel was unusually cheerful. He wore his favorite blue shirt, the one I'd once bought him for our anniversary, and whistled as he packed the car. Claire texted me separately, saying she'd be running late. I smiled when I read it. That made everything simpler. By the time we arrived, the lake shimmered like glass. My mother greeted us with her usual embrace, her perfume still the same mix of lavender and nostalgia. My father slapped Daniel on the back, saying, "Good to see you, son." If he only knew. Dinner was loud, full of overlapping voices and the clatter of cutlery. Daniel laughed easily, talking about work and plans for the future. I watched him perform, every gesture rehearsed. My sister arrived halfway through the meal, her face glowing under the soft light of the chandelier. Her eyes darted toward me, just for a second, and I saw it. That flicker of fear. I raised my glass toward her. "Glad you could make it," I said. "Wouldn't miss it," she replied, her voice tight. I smiled, slow and steady. "I bet." The tension stretched across the table like an invisible thread, ready to snap. When dessert was served, I stood up. "Before we eat," I said, "I want to share something special. A little surprise." I reached for the remote resting near my plate and connected my phone to the big screen in the living room. The TV flickered to life, the sound of faint organ music filling the air. At first, no one understood what they were watching. A chapel, lit in neon. A man and woman standing before an officiant. Then, the camera zoomed in. My mother gasped. My father's fork clattered to the floor. Daniel's face drained of color. Claire went perfectly still. On the screen, they were smiling, exchanging vows, rings gleaming under fluorescent lights. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and they kissed as the crowd of strangers cheered. The silence that followed in the real room was heavier than any sound. I turned to face them both, my expression calm. "Guess honesty wasn't part of your vows," I said softly. My mother started crying. My father's face turned crimson. "What is this?" he demanded. But he didn't need an answer. The evidence was playing right there, in perfect high definition. Daniel stammered something, a lie that tripped over itself. Claire tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "You always wanted what I had," I said. "Now you have it, and look where it got you." No one spoke after that. My father told them to leave. My mother couldn't even look at them. Daniel tried to grab his bag, but she stopped him with a single, shaking hand. "Out," she said. "Both of you." I watched them go, two figures walking out into the night, carrying nothing but the weight of their own choices. When the door closed, I sat back down, poured myself a glass of coffee, and let the silence settle again. The next morning, the house felt hollow. The scent of coffee lingered in the kitchen, but no one spoke. My parents moved around like ghosts, avoiding eye contact, trying to pretend that last night hadn't ripped the family in half. Daniel's shoes were still by the door. Claire's sweater hung on the coat rack. My mother couldn't bring herself to touch them. I watched her stare at the fabric like it might burn her fingers. "They're gone," I said. "You can throw it out." She didn't move. My father came in holding his phone, jaw locked tight. "They tried calling," he said. I blocked both numbers. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. Part of me wanted them to call, to beg, to explain, but they didn't deserve that satisfaction. They had already said everything they needed to with that one photo. Mia showed up later with 2 coffees and eyes that asked 100 questions. You really did it, she whispered. They did it to themselves, I replied. She sat across from me at the dining table. You sure you're okay? Okay isn't the word, I said. But I'm not broken. Not anymore. She didn't push. She just looked at me like she was studying something new, the version of me that no longer waited for apologies. By the end of the week, the story spread through our family like wildfire. Cousins called to check in, pretending to be sympathetic while digging for details. My aunt texted me, saying she was heartbroken for everyone, which was her polite way of saying she couldn't believe Claire would do something like that. I let them talk. The more they speculated, the less I had to explain. Silence had become my sharpest weapon. Daniel tried to reach me once. An email appeared in my inbox 3 days after the reunion. No subject line, no greeting, just a wall of words. He wrote that he'd made a mistake, that it just happened, that he didn't plan it. He said he still loved me, that he missed the way things were. He ended with, "Please, let me fix this." I read it once, then deleted it. The next message came from Claire, shorter, colder. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. I didn't reply. There was nothing to understand. They chose each other, and in doing so, they lost everyone else. But what surprised me most was how quickly guilt tried to creep in. Late at night, lying in bed alone, I'd hear the echo of their laughter, memories of holidays, birthdays, all the ordinary moments that had once felt solid. And for a second, I'd almost miss them. Almost. Then I'd remember the video, the ring sliding onto her finger, and the feeling vanished like smoke. A week later, my mother called me into the living room. She sat on the couch with a folded newspaper on her lap. You should see this, she said quietly. It was a photo, Daniel and Claire outside a courthouse. The headline read, Vegas newlyweds file for divorce 2 weeks after secret wedding. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction. Not joy, that would have required caring. Just a calm recognition that the inevitable had arrived faster than expected. They're living in a motel on the edge of town, my father said. He got fired. She left her job. No one wants to be near them. I stared at the photo again. Claire's hair looked dull, her smile forced. Daniel looked older, tired, stripped of his usual arrogance. They wanted each other, I said. Now they have nothing else. My mother looked at me with a mix of sorrow and pride. You didn't deserve any of this, she said. I know, I replied. But I'm the one who ended it right. Mia and I met that evening for dinner. She'd been my anchor through all of it, calm when I needed quiet, blunt when I tried to excuse their behavior. Everyone's talking about you, she said, cutting into her salad. Half of them are terrified of crossing you now. I smirked. Good. You really think it's over? Almost, I said. I just need to close one last door. Her eyebrow arched. What door? I leaned back in my chair, thinking. The part where they think I'm still angry. I'm not. I'm indifferent. And that's what will destroy them most. That night, I wrote a letter not for them, but for me. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about release. I wrote that I had no intention of seeking revenge beyond what had already happened. That they'd punish themselves more effectively than I ever could. I folded it neatly, sealed it, and tucked it into my drawer. Then I opened Daniel's old drawer, the one still full of shirts I hadn't thrown away yet. His watch was there, the one I gave him for our 5th anniversary. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand, then dropped it in the trash. It made a small, satisfying clink. The house was quiet again. This time, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. 2 days later, my father hosted a small family meeting, the kind he used to hold when something serious needed addressing. Everyone sat around the living room, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother, who rarely left her chair by the window. My father stood up. As far as this family is concerned, Claire and Daniel are no longer part of it. We will not discuss them. We will not entertain their apologies. Is that clear? Everyone nodded. I stayed silent, watching the way my mother's hand shook as she set down her tea. Later, as people left, she stopped me by the door. You didn't just expose them, she said softly. You protected all of us from living a lie. I didn't know how to respond. I just hugged her. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace, Not happiness, but steadiness. That night, my phone buzzed again. A new message. This time, it was a video from an unknown number. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was grainy footage, a motel hallway. Claire's voice came through faintly, arguing with Daniel. The sound of something breaking followed, then silence. The camera shifted, and for a moment, Claire's tear-streaked face filled the frame. "You got what you wanted," she shouted. "Now look at us." Then the screen went black. I replayed it once, twice. No words came. Whoever sent it didn't include a message. Just the video. For a moment, I felt something unexpected, not sympathy, but recognition. They were unraveling, the same way I once had when I realized my world had collapsed. But unlike them, I had chosen to rebuild. I forwarded the video to no one. I deleted it, closed my phone, and looked out the window at the dark street below. Somewhere, they were still trying to make sense of their wreckage. And me? I was finally free of it. The next morning, a white envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in Claire's handwriting. I carried it inside, sat down, and opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph, the same Vegas chapel, now empty. On the back, she'd written "New One." I stared at the words for a long time, then set the photo on the table. "No," I whispered. "You lost." 3 months passed before I heard another word about them. By then, the shock had faded into memory, replaced by something calmer. I went back to work, spent weekends with friends, and even started sleeping through the night again. My life was quiet, organized, almost unrecognizable compared to the chaos that came before. One rainy afternoon, while sorting mail, I found a small brown envelope wedged between bills. Inside was a folded court document. The names were familiar: Daniel and Claire Reynolds' final divorce decree. No return address, no note, just the paperwork. I didn't know who sent it. Maybe one of them, maybe a clerk who'd found my name somewhere in the case file. Either way, it felt like the last loose thread had just tied itself off. I set the papers down and watched the rain blur the world outside the window. For a long time, I had thought revenge would bring satisfaction. It hadn't. What brought peace was distance, knowing I could live without needing their apology, without needing them at all. Mia came by that night with takeout and her usual grin. "You're glowing," she said, dropping onto my couch. "I'm finally done," I told her. "It's over." She glanced at the papers on the table. "You're not even going to frame them?" I laughed. "I don't need trophies." "You're stronger than most people," she said, half joking, half serious. "No," I replied. "I just stopped pretending people like that deserve sympathy." We ate in comfortable silence. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim in my own story. I was the person who had survived the storm and come out clean on the other side. A week later, my parents invited me to dinner. My mother had started smiling again, and my father had taken up fishing, something he hadn't done in years. The lake house, once haunted by that night, felt lighter. The air didn't carry tension anymore. It just smelled like pine and water. Halfway through the meal, my father poured me a glass of wine. "You know," he said, "I keep thinking about how different things could have been if you hadn't shown that video." "They would have kept lying," I said. He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but you handled it better than I ever could have. You didn't yell, you didn't beg. You just showed the truth." My mother reached across the table, her eyes soft. "That took courage, honey. You reminded us all that pretending only protects the wrong people." For once, I didn't deflect the compliment. I just smiled and said I did what needed to be done. After dinner, I walked down to the lake alone. The moonlight stretched across the surface, calm and steady. For months, I had replayed that night in my head, wondering if I'd gone too far. But standing there, listening to the quiet ripples against the dock, I realized something simple. I hadn't destroyed them. They had destroyed themselves. I had only shown everyone what they'd done. The wind picked up slightly, brushing through the trees, and I felt lighter than I had in a long time. A few days later, Mia texted me a link. It was an article from a small Vegas gossip site. The headline read, "Former couple behind viral family scandal moves out of state." They were gone. No forwarding address, no trace left behind. I stared at the screen, then closed it. I didn't care where they went. I didn't need to know if they rebuilt or fell apart. The story had ended, and for once, I didn't want a sequel. 2 months later, I sold the house Daniel and I once shared. It took exactly one open house and a single offer. I packed my things in silence, room by room, until the place looked empty, not sad, just cleared of history. Before locking the door for the last time, I walked through each room. The kitchen where I'd read his text. The stairs where he'd kiss me hello after Vegas. The bedroom that used to hold promises now buried in memory. I paused by the front door, looked back once, and said quietly, goodbye. The click of the lock sounded final, clean, definite, like a book closing. I moved into a small apartment downtown. It was nothing like the house, smaller, brighter, full of life. The noise from the street below felt comforting, a reminder that the world was still moving forward. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. The first thing I painted was a lake under a silver sky, still and endless. One evening, Mia came over and saw it hanging on the wall. "It's beautiful," she said. "What's it called?" I smiled. "Closure." She tilted her head. "You sure this is the end?" "It has to be," I said. "Some stories don't need more chapters." A few weeks later, I received one last message, a single line from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy now." No name, but I didn't need one. I deleted it without hesitation. Happiness wasn't something I owed anyone. It was something I built myself. The following morning, I stood on my balcony with coffee in hand, watching the city wake. Cars moved below, horns echoing faintly through the air. I felt grounded, present, alive in a way I hadn't in years. Everything that had once defined me, the marriage, the betrayal, the revenge, had become background noise to the person I was now. I wasn't the woman waiting for someone to choose her. I was the woman who had chosen herself. Mia called as the sun rose over the buildings. "So," she asked, "what's next for you?" I smiled, setting the cup down. "Whatever I want." And for the first time, I truly meant it. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time since it all began. Just one line. "The past doesn't deserve more of my time." Then I closed it, turned off the light, and went to sleep, not dreaming of revenge or regret, but of a clean slate. Months later, when autumn arrived, I visited the lake again. The water was calm, just as I remembered. My parents met me at the dock, smiling. The air was cool, leaves floating gently across the surface. My mother handed me a photo, one from years ago, when Claire and I were kids, laughing in that same spot. "You can keep it," she said softly. I took it, looked at our younger faces, and smiled faintly. "I already forgave her," I said. "I just never need to see her again." My father nodded. "That's enough." We stood there for a while, watching the water ripple under the wind. No words left, no anger, no wounds still open. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing everything had finally found its place.